So from here, we are going to be experiencing the great stories and what Merwan Dubash has to share. So Merwan was born in Karachi in 1947 to Adi and Rhoda Dubash, who were close Meher Baba disciples. He was named by Meher Baba and grew up under Baba's guidance and orders. Merwan met Baba for the first time when he was 18 months old. He had the great privilege of spending time with Baba on many occasions, including the Wadia Park Darshan in 1954, East-West Gathering of 1962, and 3 long visits with Baba and Guru Prasad in Pune in the 1960s. A Canadian, Merwan has lived in Toronto for over 45 years. He is a chartered accountant, or CPA, retired since 2005, and was a trustee of Baba's Trust from 2014 to 2020. Since retirement, he and his wife Ruby have been spending 6 months of the year at Meherabad. Lucky. And with that, please welcome Merwan.
Thanks, Ali. Jai Baba, everybody. The talk I'm going to give today is really in 2 parts. As this is an Amartithi program, I sort of thought that I should talk a little bit about Amartithi. So that'll be the first part. I'll give you some personal thoughts on Amartithi, and then I will talk about the role of the volunteers in the regular Amartithi celebration program at Meherabad. You may find that interesting. And the second part of my talk, I will talk about some of my personal experiences when I was with Baba. So, Amartithi. Well, I guess most people want to know where you were when Baba dropped his body. I was actually in London, England. I was there studying. And I lived in rented rooms with the family. And the day Baba dropped his body, I called my landlady to say that I wouldn't be coming home because I was staying over with a friend. And she tells me, oh, listen, this fellow called Mr. Irani has been calling. He's called a number of times. And he says, it's absolutely urgent. You call him immediately. At first, when he said Mr. Irani, it didn't ring a bell. I said, Mr. Irani? He said, yes, his first name is, I think, Adi or something. I said, oh, yes, of course. This is Baba's brother, of course, Adi Jr., who lived in London. So I was calling from a public phone booth in an underground station, a subway station in London. So I immediately called Adi, and he says, where are you? I've been trying to get hold of you all day. I said, well, I'm sorry, I wasn't home. So I said, what's up? He says, well, we just got the news that Baba dropped his body. So I was, of course, taken aback, not expecting anything like that. So my reaction was, what? Are you joking? Oh, I said the wrong words. Are you joking? Adi I guess Adi was quite tensed with all this and quite upset. When I said, are you joking? He really laid into me. He said, what do you think? I would joke about something. He gave me a hell of a firing. If you guys, any of you guys know Adi, you know he was a little hot-tempered. So anyway, he gives me the news about Baba passing away together with his firing. So the next day or two, I talked to my parents who were in Karachi to find out what was going on and what we should be doing, if anything. And of course, the question was, should anybody go for internment? I was in London. You see, you have to also understand that we were from Pakistan, and India and Pakistan never get on together. So getting a visa to go to India is not a simple exercise. It's a big deal. So that, and the other question was that, Baba had already organized this darshan program in coming April of 1969 at Guru Prasad. And he'd asked everybody to come. And he'd asked many of us in Karachi, and even me, and we'd all responded saying, yes, we'd come. So we wanted to honor that. And we weren't sure whether we would get a visa to go in April if we went for the internment. So that sort of, killed the thought of going for the internment, because we didn't want to break our word that we'd given to Baba, saying that we would be there for the April program. So not a single person from Pakistan, which is pretty close to India, actually went for Baba's internment for that reason. Now, when Baba was in the body, I had the good fortune, as Ali said, to meet him many times. There were a couple of big programs, like large darshan programs. Wadia Pak darshan program, where reputedly tens of thousands of people came in one day. And the East-West gathering in 1962. But I also met him quite frequently at what I would call normal times. And from my distinct preference from this was to see him at normal times, if you like, when there were no large crowds. The big programs have their charm, but to me, being with him in normal times, with its intimacy and interaction, was much preferred. So for this reason, I really had no desire to go to India for Amartithi while I was abroad. We moved from England to Canada in 1974, and we kept going back to India back and forth for visits. But as I say, I had no desire to go for Amartithi. So we would always prefer visiting in quiet months, to be with him at the Samadhi and with the Mandli in Meherabad. My wife Ruby and I both retired in 2005. And that was the year we first started coming to Meherabad for 6 months, which we continue to do till today, except for the last 2 years for this fellow called Mr. COVID. He's put a stop to that. But hopefully we'll go back soon. So we went in, I believe it was November 2005, and we stayed for a 5 or 6 month period. So the first Amartithi was 2006. Now, being new to Amartithi, I had no specific duties. So I was wondering what I should do. So I asked around, and somebody told me to hang around near the Samadhi, as they generally need assistance. They're very busy. So I did that and had a very enjoyable Amartithi. As the advice given was quite correct, there's always something to do there. It's very busy. People are coming, they want prasad in bags, they want this, they want that. So to help the duty people there, it's always handy to have 1 or 2 people hanging around to do things like that. In my second year, 2007, Amartithi, I was given some responsibility now for Amartithi work. They made me in charge of the stalls in Meherabad. Now the stalls are all the vendor booths located all over lower and upper Meherabad. If you've been there for Amartithi, you may have seen them all over the place. They sell things like, they provide food, canteens, the tea. They sell prasad, flowers, Baba articles, brooches, knickknacks, photos, books, clothing, all sorts of things. And since then, over the years, I've had more duties given to me at Amartithi, including Samadhi duty and organizing a large volunteer group. So what I found is that over time, Amartithi has become one of my favorite periods. I still don't like the large crowds and prefer the intimacy of being with Baba at quiet times. But Amartithi has become a favorite because it provides a maximum opportunity to serve him. One could do this for 24 hours if one was physically able, which at this age I'm not. But I take this opportunity to work as much as possible, and with just a few hours rest, work through Amartithi. So you can say that I got addicted to serving during Amartithi. That's why it appeals to me so much. I still look after the stalls, or still have the Samadhi duty and organizing volunteers. And when not attending to these duties, I'm sort of a free-for-all fellow who gallivants all over Upper Meherabad, the Upper Meherabad side of the estate, visiting various pilgrim tent sites, kitchen sites, other locations, to keep an eye on things and help out as required. You know, over the years, we have, the trust has heard one constant regular comment from pilgrims who come for Amartithi, and that is how smoothly everything works, even with the large crowds. Maybe many of you have been to Amartithi have felt the same. Let me tell you that in large part, this is due to the volunteers who work behind the scenes. There are roughly 1,500 to 1,600 volunteers for Amartithi. The vast majority are Indians. They come from all over India, from the centers, but there are also some Westerners. And the volunteers basically look after all facets of Amartithi. You know, if you've been to Amartithi, some of the volunteers are more visible than others. For example, the Samadhi duty people, they are the people who direct you when you take darshan in Baba's Samadhi. The people managing the darshan queue. There's the group that manages the entertainment programs on the stage. There's a bunch of volunteers involved with that. You've probably seen medical volunteer tents, first aid tents, all over Meherabad, if you wandered Meherabad during Amartithi time. Then there is another group, by far the largest, at about 1,200 plus volunteers. And this is the group that I'm involved with. And they look after managing all the pilgrim accommodation sites in the hostels and the various tents that are put up all over Meherabad, and other essential elements such as security, parking, the stalls, toilets, electrical, and other things. They look after all of this all over Meherabad, the whole estate. And just to give you a brief idea of what they do, I mean, some are fairly obvious. Security, well, they look after security on the estate. Parking, okay, pretty obvious. Electrical, these are the guys who set up all the electrical arrangements that are set all over the estate. You know, these are temporary arrangements for 3 days. The people looking after the toilets, obviously they have to keep them clean, but they also make sure that water and soap is available. Now, these are things that are, you know, pretty obvious to us in the West, but in India, it's a different matter. And the people who look after the hostels and tents, they have to deal with 15,000, 20,000 Baba lovers who come and live on site. So they have to manage the tents. They have to make sure that people can only come in with badges for security purposes so that there are no thefts, this, that, and the other. They manage things like providing hot water for pilgrims, for baths. Yes, hot water, all done manually, because most Indians like to have a bath on the 31st morning before they go to Baba's Samadhi for darshan. And then there are the stall volunteers. Their main focus is cleanliness when it comes to the canteens and the tea stalls, to make sure that things are clean where they sell juice. You've seen them selling sugarcane juice, probably. They make sure that no water is mixed with it. So a lot of their focus is cleanliness. They also focus on things like pricing and the items that are sold in the stalls, because each and every item sold in the stall, whether it be food, clothing, Baba knickknacks, badges, clothes, whatever, DVDs. All the pricing is approved by the trust. And a lot of the knickknacks and things, the badges, the brooches, are all looked at by the trust, each and every single item for quality, to make sure that the quality is good. I mean, sometimes you see items that you can't even decipher Baba's face. It's so bad. So the trust actually looks at the quality of each of these items. And the volunteers get lists of all this, and they make sure that all this is done. And apart from that, they also keep an eye on the crowds that come in. And there are some very, very serious crowds that come in there on the evening of the 31st. And that leads to things like pickpocketing and theft from the stalls and things like that. So they look after all these things. The primary objective of the volunteers is to ensure that they take care of all the facilities so that everything works smoothly for pilgrims attending Amartithi. And the pilgrims can then focus their full attention on Baba. That's the whole idea of the volunteers. And the other thing this large group of 1,200 volunteers does is, over the last 5 or 6 years now, there are so many people who come on the 31st that not all of them can take darshan at Baba's samadhi. So these 1,200 have voluntarily agreed not to take Baba's darshan at the samadhi on 31st January, so that others get a chance. So these fellows really do their piece at making Amartithi a success. Anyway, I hope this gives you some idea of what the volunteers do, and more importantly, their impact on the Amartithi program. So this is a little of what I had to say for Amartithi. Now I'm going to change the focus of my talk and share some of my experiences with Baba. My main contact with him was in the 50s and 60s. And in the 60s, I was a teenager when I was still living in Karachi with my parents, of course. So I'm going to talk about an incident in 1964, and then talk briefly about a visit to Baba in Guru Prasad in 1965. In 1964 December, I was in university in Karachi, and we had our midterm exams in December. Now, the system there is such that you have to pay exam fees to write your midterm exams. But also at that time, there was a lot of student trouble in the city, including riots with police and this and that. And normally when there was student trouble like that, I would stay away from school. But on this particular day, which was the last day to pay the exam fees, I had to go because there was no out, no fees, no exam. So I was waiting in line with some of the students in the administration building. We could hear a slight commotion outside as some students were agitating with the police. And all of a sudden, without any warning, there was chaos. Students were shouting and yelling, running through the building. They were being chased by the police. A riot had broken out. I got caught in this unawares. And before I knew it, I was hit a very hard blow on the head by a policeman's lathi. Now, a lathi is a thick wooden stick, about 4 or 5 feet long, and it has a metal tip on the top. And it was the metal tip that I was hit with on the head. The blow was so hard that it affected me like an anesthetic. And I felt no pain whatsoever. I knew I'd been hit on the head, but I felt no pain, believe it or not. By now, I was running around trying to hide, little knowing how badly I was hurt. I only realized that I was in some trouble because one of my friends who was with me looked at me and looked at my shirt and said, "Merwan, where's all this blood come on your shirt from?" So I said, "What blood?" I put my hand up here and my hand was covered in blood. By now, anyway, the riot had stopped. And to add insult to injury, the police rounded up all the injured students and herded them off in a police van to the hospital, civil hospital in Karachi. The theory behind arresting only the injured was that since you were injured, the police had positive proof that you were involved in the riot, believe it or not. I mean, it sounds quite funny right now when I talk about it, but I tell you at the time, it was anything but. My parents found out about this through a friend of mine who was there with me, and they came looking for me at the civil hospital. Now, the civil hospital is a free hospital in Karachi, publicly funded, but like most publicly funded hospitals in third world countries, it's terrible. It's dirty, it's filthy, the treatment is third class. Actually, you would pay money not to be taken to it. It's that bad. Probably is today as well. Now, by the time my parents got to me, I had been x-rayed and my wound was stitched. My parents had to pull a few strings to get me out of the hospital because I was theoretically in police custody. So they had to pull a few strings to get me out and into a better equipped private hospital, which they managed to do. My injury took place late morning. And by the time I was moved to a better hospital, it was late afternoon. But by this time, the anesthetic was beginning to wear off. And the pain was excruciating. It was probably the worst pain I've ever experienced. Apparently, I had a hairline fracture of the skull. And the doctor said that the next 48 hours would be critical to knowing the extent of my injuries and knowing whether I would make a full recovery or not. Now, just like most Baba stories, there's a little bit a humorous side to this. The doctor said 48 hours was critical to knowing the extent of my injury. The word that gets out in the Parsi community is that the doctors have given Merwan 48 hours to live. So, of course, the Parsi community was taken aback by it. And my parents say that over the next 2 days, a whole host of people, relatives, friends, not even close friends, came to visit at the hospital. Of course, I wasn't aware of any of this because they sedated me for 2 days for the 48 hours. Now, anytime when there was a serious injury or accident, it was normal to inform Baba. And so a cable was sent to him. We received a cable back from Baba saying, and I quote, "Give Merwan the best medical treatment and be resigned to divine will." Of course, I survived the critical 48 hours, and the doctors were then able to tell that I would make a full recovery. So once again, Baba was informed. And we got another cable from him saying, and I quote again, "Happy Merwan improving. Don't worry, my nazar is on you all." Now, my recovery was long and slow process. I was in something like 3 weeks in hospital, suffered double vision for months. And it took about 4 to 5 months for me to get back to normal. By now, it was getting close to May 1965. And in May, we were scheduled to visit Baba and Guru Prasad in Pune. Now, Baba had organized a darshan program from the 1st of May to the 6th of May. And we had been asked to come. Unfortunately, my college exams were in the first week of May. This is my final exams now. And knowing that Baba always took one's education very seriously and would never let me miss any exams, we informed Baba that because of the exams, I could not come. So we got a response from Baba, said, yes, Merwan should do his exams, but Adi and Rhoda, my parents, should come for the program, as he wanted them to be volunteers and to help with the program. Merwan should join, and then he says Merwan should join after his exams. And all three can stay in Pune for the remainder of his stay. until Baba returns to Meherabad. So at the end of, around the end of April, my parents take off for India, of course, because they have to be there on May 1st. Baba always calls you a week or so before the program to make sure everything's organized properly by the volunteers. And I was left in Karachi with my grandparents to do my exams. On May 1st, on May 4th, which is during this darshan period, out of the blue, I receive a cable from Baba. This is the first time the cable was addressed to me. Normally, it would be addressed to my parents. The cable quite sweetly inquired, just like a father inquiring about his son. And I quote, "How are you, my dear Merwan?" And even bigger surprise was that 3 days later, on my birthday, I received another cable from Baba saying, and I quote, "My love, blessings to you on your birthday." Why he sent these last two cables, only he knows. But of course, I was only too pleased and happy to receive them. So after my exams, I go to Pune. And on the first day, whenever you go to meet Baba, he asks you to bow down to him. And then he asks you, you know, how you've been, how you slept, your health and things like that. And we did all that. And of course, he wanted to know how I had recovered from my accident. So I told him that I had recovered fully. And everything was fine. I was back to normal, playing all my sports and everything. So everything, I was now normal. So Baba was pleased to hear that. And then he says, and he gestures like this. So he was saying, and Hirat says, Baba says, if my nazar had not been on you, you would have died. So that's what he tells me. So our stay at Guru Prasad went like this. Every day at 8 in the morning, we would go to Guru Prasad. This was the time Baba instructed to be there at Guru Prasad. By then, Baba was in the men Mandali's side. He was in a small room that was known as Mandali Hall there. Baba would come in the mornings around 7-ish or something like that, I understand. And then he would be on the men's side till 12 noon. Then he would go into the ladies' side to be with them and have his lunch. And after lunch, he would return to the men's side at 2 and then stay there till about 4:30, sometimes even later, when he would retire for the evening and return to his room. So we were in Guru Prasad every day from 8 to 4:30, including lunch. Mom had the good fortune of having lunch with Baba and the ladies. And Dad and I would have lunch with the men Mandali. So this was our daily routine in Guru Prasad. If only all routines could be so sublime, huh? This 1965 visit with Baba at Guru Prasad was quite different from the previous ones we had with him in 1960 and 63. In the previous visits, there was always lots of activity, lots of people. In the morning, there would be 20, 30 people in the side Mandali Hall on the men's side. Sometimes more, we would be jammed up, sitting tight when it was full. There would be singing programs, bhajan programs, some entertainment programs. For some time, month or 6 weeks, Baba would have darshan programs in the main hall at Guru Prasad for Pune and Bombay Baba lovers. In the afternoons, of course, every afternoon we played cards. And Baba also would go to house visits in the afternoons. And the house visits where Baba would visit the houses of close Pune Baba lovers. who would invite him for tea. So Baba would go and he would take 2 or 3 carloads of people with him, all men, from the men's, because that was the men's time in the afternoon. So we would get to visit, we would get to go on these house visits with Baba also quite often. But all this was absent in 1965. And this was because of his health. Now, before I got to Pune, as I said, Baba had that 6-day darshan program. The first day was on May 1st was the official opening of the Pune Center. And then for 5 days, the program moved to Guru Prasad in the back compound of Guru Prasad, the same setup, very similar to the East-West gathering. Now, if some of you have seen a movie, I think it's called The Ancient One. It documents this darshan program. And in that movie, you will see that Baba looked very healthy and radiant. However, only days or at best a week after this program, when I arrived at Guru Prasad, Baba looked very tired and drained, and his hip joint was bothering him a lot. So much that at times he wouldn't walk on it. He would sit in a wheelchair even within Guru Prasad to move from room to room. He would still come to the side Mandli Hall room on the men's side in the mornings. But because of the pain in his hip joint, he would not sit in his normal chair, which was a large upholstered sofa. He would sit in a more upright chair to ease the pain in his hip. And in the afternoons, previously we would normally come to the men's side also, but in the afternoons in 1965, he would mainly stay in his room because he didn't want to walk or put strain on his hip. So we would go and sit with him in his room. Now, in the month of May, after the darshan programs were over, there was still a little activity in Guru Prasad, with close ones from Pune and Bombay visiting. I believe there was a darshan program in the main Guru Prasad Hall in the first week of June. But after that, Baba declared that he wanted to remain undisturbed, and all visitors were stopped. In essence, he had gone into seclusion. Now, since the visitors to Baba were severely restricted, there were very few people around. In the mornings, there would be about a handful or so, and in the afternoons, even less. There were many times in the afternoon when there would be only Irach, Meherji, as you know, was one of his mandli, my dad and myself with Baba in his bedroom. My mother would be in Guru Prasad in the afternoons, but she had been given the duty from, I think, her visit in 1963, that in the afternoons, she was to help Mani with her correspondence and typing and so on. And she had been strictly told that she must not come and see Baba. Only she could come to Baba if Baba called her. So my mom, although she was in Guru Prasad, she wouldn't be with us with Baba. The other men mandli in Guru Prasad in 1965 with Baba, apart from Irach, remember Meherji didn't stay with Baba, wasn't a resident mandli. Meherji lived in Pune. So the others were Pendu, Bhau, and Aloba. And they would be tied up in their work. I remember that Bhau was writing something, probably his ghazals at that time. And he would be all day involved with that. You would never see him with Baba. The only time we saw Bhau would be for lunch. So he would be tied up with that. Pendu also had his chores concerning food and household on the men's side. So he would be tied up with that quite a bit. And Aloba also had his chores, including the main one was guard duty on the main gate at Guru Prasad to see that no stranger walked into Guru Prasad. So they would off and on, when they had time between their chores, they would come and sit with Baba. Now, about 2 weeks before the end of Baba's stay, my father was called back to Karachi urgently by his father, my grandfather. They were business partners. And although after finding out more about the details, my dad told Baba that, Baba, the matter isn't urgent and there's no need for me to go back. It can wait for a couple of weeks. Baba said, no, your father has called you, so you must go. So Dad left. Now, in the afternoons, when we went to Baba's bedroom, one of the things that Baba liked was the afternoon newspaper read to him, the newspaper read to him. And the paper would be delivered every day to Guru Prasad. And Pendu, who was a newspaper addict, would read it in the mornings. And in the afternoon, when we went to Baba's room after lunch, we took the paper with us. Now, while my dad was there, Baba had asked him to read the newspaper to him. But now that Dad was no longer there, Baba turned to me and says, now from today, since your father isn't here, you read the newspaper to me. So I said, okay. You might be interested to know how one reads the newspaper to Baba. Baba's was interested in the front page, the international news, and the sports section. Yes, the sports section. Don't forget, his favorite sport was cricket. So when you got the newspaper, you would read the headline on the column. And if Baba wanted you to stop and move on, he would go like this, meaning move on. So you would move on. But if you read the headline and he wanted you to continue, Baba would go like this, meaning you can speak, read on. But even when Baba asked you to read on, I rarely ever remember reading a whole article to him. I would read 2 or 3 sentences, maybe half the article, and then Baba would say, stop and move on. So you would move to another article and that way. Baba wasn't interested in local news, accidents, fires, deaths, local politics, things like that. Even politics, Baba had very little interest in, unless it was major international politics. So you had to have an idea of what he liked, because you wouldn't reach each and every column to him. You would select which column you thought Baba would like and read that to him. Quite often, I would be reading a news story and Baba would stop me and then tell me how to pronounce a word that I had mispronounced. Of course, Iraj would do that. Baba would just gesture and Iraj would tell me. It felt like just like a father teaching his son. Don't forget, I was only 18 at that time, so I was pretty young. Now, with Dad no longer there, there were times when only the 3 of us were with Baba, Iraj, Meherji, and myself. Now, Meherji, as I said, he lived in Pune. Meherji had a thriving business in Pune. So in the mornings, he would attend to his business, whatever had to be done there. And he would come to Guru Prasad either in the late morning or sometimes after lunch, depending on how his work went. So there would be times when Meherji wouldn't be there after lunch. So it would be only Iraj and myself. And despite the fact that Baba detached himself from the world, didn't want anything to do, it stopped correspondence, everything. There was, correspondence would always come in. There would always be a few letters. So Iraj would read that to him. And sometimes if Baba wanted a response done quickly, he would send Iraj out and he say, you write this response so that it goes in the mail this afternoon, while I was reading the paper to Baba. So there would be only myself and Baba in the room, and I would be reading the paper. Now, the first time this happened, the thought certainly crossed my mind. What if something happens to Baba when I'm alone with him? Remember, his health was not good at that time. But I quickly realized that Dr. Gaver is within shouting distance. You know, Baba's room was on the ladies' side of Guru Prasad. And just behind Baba's rooms were the ladies. So a couple of yells and Dr. Gaver would have appeared pretty quick. So that calmed me down pretty quick. And then I got used to it after the first time. So all in all, this was really a very unique and intimate visit with him in 1965. The visit lasted for me, it was more than 6 weeks. For my mom and dad, for my parents, it was over 2 months because they came at the beginning of May. And it ended when Baba left for Meherabad on July 1st. Now, here's a small little incident on July 1st. July 1st, when Baba would normally leave Guru Prasad to go to Meherabad, his car would stop at Ban Garden, which was en route. And it would stop under the tree, which was known as Babajan's tree, because Babajan used to sit under that tree very frequently. And all the local Pune Baba lovers would congregate there, of course, by the hundreds to have their last glimpse of him and last touch, if they were lucky. But this time, because of his health, Baba decided not to stop at Ban Garden. And instead, still to give an opportunity for its Pune lovers to have one last glance at him, he allowed them to come to Guru Prasad that morning. So there's this hustle and bustle going on in Guru Prasad with all these hundreds of people, monthly leaving last minute things to look after. And Baba comes out of his room and goes in, sits in the car, which was waiting for him. He's sitting on the seat, the doors open. Iraj is standing by his side. And Iraj started mentioning some names. Baba wanted some people. So Iraj mentioned the names of the people Baba wanted. So they would go to him and get whatever last minute instruction or whatever it is he wanted to give them. And all of a sudden, the name Rhoda Dubash is announced. So my mom perks up and she rushes off to meet Baba, who's sitting in the car. Now, July 1st was their wedding anniversary. And in all this hustle and bustle, Baba turns to her and says, Rhoda, today is your anniversary, isn't it? And my mom says, yes, Baba, it is. And he asks her if she had sent a cable to Adi, my father, who had now gone back to Karachi. And my mom says, yes, Baba, I did. So Baba was pleased with that. So she got her a second chance to have a last glimpse of and close-up glimpse with him. That's how it's amazing sometimes the small little things that he remembers, you know. Anyway, that was the last time that I and my family saw Baba in 1965. After that, he went into seclusion and didn't allow any visits, any darshan programs as such. And in 1967, I left Karachi for further postgraduate studies in England, as directed by Baba. So that's that's what I wanted to tell you about our 1965 visit. And that really brings me to the end of my talk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. It really brings light and color to Baba. So thank you. Thank you.